Yeah, somebody, I deserve a small award for actually saying evening and not morning. Like that took about all of my strength to say that. Hey, great. And there's my award, the meshiest, I guess, is the messiest is probably the right. Nice. Let me share these meeting minutes with everybody. So, all right. Hey, while people are filtering in, if you have topics today, toss them in, and we'll be off in less than 2 minutes, about 90 seconds. I've got one other one. Good day. Good morning. Alonzo, good morning. Thank goodness you're on. I can say good morning with confidence. Buenos dias. Alonso, did Jesus catch up with you? If alrighty, good. Alonzo, it goes without saying that your contributions don't go unnoticed. So I think that's part of a big part of the point. So yeah, totally. No, thank you. No, thank you. I tell you what, you know what's it's being the one who's responsible for trimming the recordings of these meetings. I feel like I can make all kinds of horrific jokes at the start, and then we'll just trim those off and we'll start the meeting. So good. Cover your ears while I get these jokes out. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's the Meshery Development Meeting, February 3rd, 2021. 2021. Wednesday. We are just a week, 2 weeks before, I'm not sure, before full Meshery V050 release. So for those of you who haven't noticed already, which I think most of you have, we've got our first beta release out for V050. So it's we should probably make that a topic here. So do note down any topics that you might have as we get going here. On the topic of V050, what else do we have left to do? What are some of our untested areas? Has anyone given additional thought to the master test plan, the master test strategy? These are probably artifacts we should have in place. Release. master test strategy. So we've talked about these two artifacts in the Meshery CI meeting. So we've been sort of restarted that meeting once every couple of weeks. And so I believe both of these docs have really yet to be written. But as we graduate to a V050, it's about that time that we start to get particular about code quality. And we have been, right? So we've brought in some end-to-end integration testing. We're spinning up Kubernetes. We're deploying service meshes automatically each time that we're doing a PR. We've begun, some of us have begun to do unit tests painfully. But it's a start. We've got CodeCov plugged in now. We've got Cypress UI plugged in. Actually, we're taking steps. Getting it's, by the way, just as a side note, it's important that we're taking these steps. And one, because when we do get to a 1.0, that is, like it or not, that's sort of the general signal that a piece of software is production ready. And so we'll need to sort of harden our practices and improve our coverage as we go. We've begun to have different priorities of GitHub issues. So I think there's kind of 3 priorities right now, and they probably need to be updated eventually. There's a low priority, high priority, and urgent. But we may need one that is identified as like a blocker, or we may need to just sort of structure it like priority 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially, and associate what those mean. A P1 or a P0, what have you, meaning it's a blocker. You can't release without it. We also probably wouldn't want to release with any P1. We'll have to define these. And that's kind of what we're looking for, what I'm looking for between the master test strategy and the build and release plan, is what's the gating criteria for a release. So Rodolfo Martinez Vegas is leading the CI calls. And I don't know that he's able to join this call today. But for any of you who speak to him next, if you would convey the notion that part of what we're looking for here is gating criteria for a release. By the way, for those of you who have been around the block, or those of you that haven't, one way to structure gating criteria like this is in terms of like, how do you define and be comfortable and confident with code quality? Well, one of the ways is to say that not only would you say something statically like, oh, there are 0 P0s, there's 0 blockers. What you would also say is something that's a little more dynamic. You'd say for the last 2 weeks, there's been a certain trailing percent, like the percent of open P1s, P2, these open bugs has been decreasing by a certain percentage, which basically just says like, it doesn't matter what their priority is, just you can characterize the quality of the code overall as only improving because the rate of defects being opened, or the rate of certain class of defects, is just trailing off. And so food for thought as we go to write those. If anyone has the links to these 2 docs, toss in the links if you would, because frankly, some of what I just said is golden. So we should put that into the doc. That's a total joke, by the way, about that being golden. Okay. Anyway, we've got a couple of other topics. I'm compelled to pull this one to the top, though, in part just because I see Sako's smiling face at 7 a.m. So by the way, some of you, Sako, some of you might know Sako. Many of you may not. Sako is, well, I don't know. He's like, he's in the first 10 contributors to the project. He's the first GSoccer to come through the community, and he's off and has well, geez, I don't know. I feel like you've been through off to greener pastures and then sort of off to even greener pastures after that. And so, um,
I'm around.
yeah. So, Sako, one of the things that you were messaging about recently is like deployments of Meshery,
Yeah.
and yeah, I thought I'd shut my mouth for a minute and let you talk a little bit about like what Metabob is, how Meshery might be helpful, or
Yeah, definitely. So Metabolis was one of my schoolmate had worked on. He's currently CEO, and we have another CT also again from school. So it was part of NEC Accelerator, uh, where some with researchers they came idea that how we can do AI based code review. It started with Python, so using the pull request, doing some NLP there, and then applying it. Once you have the code, it's will automatically you can sign in with. Basically, it will find the mistakes and so on, and will show you in visualize this and give you some suggestions. So that's what it's doing idea, and as a moving forward, it's going promising because currently it's in second accelerator, and doing some funding with Antler, and currently in accelerator with Alchemist. So going through, and there is good attraction from as well from that perspective. So it's becoming more and more SaaS, and I was helping out more in engineering side, all this building infrastructure and for how it can be with best practice and so on and so, and bringing in the DevOps side of tooling and architecting, and so yeah, it's everything is in AWS, and it was a good opportunity. The code itself is you- written React and Python backend, and all this latest greatest technology I could bring, and definitely, as I mentioned, Meshery was one of them wherever I go. So, and I can quickly demo once. Yeah,
oh
we get
yeah,
a part.
man, look at that. We you well, I hate to give us too much credit, but uh, I would say to the extent that it's been a while since you've been on the call, but you show up and then just have something to demo. That's that's how we do it. That's great. That's
Let me do it. So yeah, I will have also a couple comments regarding from DevOps perspective,
totally
and yeah. So first thing, it's in behind VPN. We use AWS VPN here, and if you're gonna go, it's in. If you don't know, Okta is a centralized tool where you add all the applications you have for passing everything and so on. And I decided it was a good point for Meshery to be there. So again, I have to work in OIDC. Okta support also OIDC, but there is also would be nice. I don't know if there is any plan for support SAML. It's usually enterprise feature, but yeah, it's one of the things I would say that either it's in enterprise feature gonna be if there is any plan, or it can be also added in open source. There is a way to do that. So, but for now, once you connect to VPN and you gonna just come through, and you see because I logged in. But if you haven't logged in, it's bringing you here, and the other things I would say, that's 1 second. I think I need to, yeah. So it, let's say, okay. So come do you see my tool? Okay. Yeah, I think yeah, I think that was with Metable one. So yeah, I think do I have a result here? No, probably I have done is my own. I would like just to show the results. Uh, yeah, I think I logged in probably is my personal one. Let's see if I can get into it. But
Yeah, the logout is it doesn't actually work. You'll have to open it. Yeah, oh yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let's log in with that. So yeah, I have done a couple tests, and I think it was good because every time once there is a QA manual tester, so they can do before the release, and then we can save it because it's also we have here Istio as a service mesh, and would be nice to have. So just here and there, I was just impressed with in general the progress, which is it was a while also I wasn't following, and it's really amazing jump to community to and for that,
Yeah.
and definitely there is a good value from just uh, is startup perspective, because now the performance can be evaluated and it can be done every release, and couple things will be like from just purely evaluating from the
Oh yeah,
needs
no.
per.
Yeah, hey, be please be critical. Please like don't sugarcoat it. Like give
No,
it
it's yeah, definitely think from reliability perspective, it's so far going good. It's just would be nice for the group. I don't know if it's support already. There'll be like group feature, like because I would like to share this result can be some other folks. Let's say QA can do, and then we can see that. I'm not sure if it's already there, that or it's
yeah,
going.
it's not. But it totally needs to. But the yeah the SAML is precisely what you would identify it as. Is like that's a perfect thing for the providers to implement and to support. Is like that's where the authentication and authorization happens, and yep, a kind of roadmap for the
Yeah,
Meshery remote provider. The ability to when people start to consume and use Meshery in a team environment and in a serious way, like the ability to say, hey, you should check out this test that I just ran. Do you see this part? Like the ability to share that, or not only share the results, but the ability also to share your test configuration. Because maybe you put in certain parameters, like you ran it for 5 minutes and you hammered it in this way. Um, the ability for you to, as an individual user, to save that profile and recall it, so you don't have to type it all back in, would be nice. Two, the ability then to share both the results and the test profile with another user. Yeah, those are great suggestions. Those are both. As a matter of fact, the one for creating the test profile so that you can save that profile and just come back. All you would have to do is come back here and say, run that same test, basically. Um, that's coming soon.
yeah. But that's enough at this point. We see enough value. Yeah? Like for before the release, you see exact time, what was the parameters, and what was the test result, and you can evaluate whatever feature was added and how's the performance, how we are doing with performance. So that's already today. That's having saving that result particularly helps a lot. Just to for that. Uh, Another nice thing would be have like make sure CLI run through the UI, which is also let's say in Vault HashiCorp Vault case is having that one, and I think it's pretty much the UI side. There could be. I liked also in general the Vault itself. They have a good role-based access and all this stuff. That's from ideas there would be similar, which is already secure and enterprise kind of level, which is even so not yet. But yeah, that could be one thing, having CLI here. And sometimes I think, yeah, that's all. I also liked the evaluation based on, I think Nighthawk. It's I haven't used that tool. It's added new, yeah, this one.
Yeah, it is, and I'm not sure that it'll work for you either. Like,
Okay,
um,
okay.
which means we probably need to grab. Yeah, it is new. Nighthawk is a sub project of the Envoy project. So Nighthawk is so. What's funny is Sako knows this area pretty well. The Nighthawk is written in C++,
Hmm.
sort of like WRK2, and so because Meshery is in Go, like wrapping some support around it and stuff. So actually, Nighthawk is a focus, or is an upcoming focus of the communities. Will be what would be creating a new project called Get Nighthawk, because we're gonna do some deep things with Nighthawk.
Oh, it's
Some
more
so
investment on development. Okay.
yeah, the one of the things is like to do well to help people answer questions like, hey, when I want to understand how to best configure my service mesh. Should I've got a certain requirements, certain resiliency requirements, for example, and so maybe I should go to each of my services and have them have set like 2 or 5 or whatever number of retries between each service. So, well, what's the optimal number? Well, just like just like answering what's the performance of your mesh, it's like it depends. As we gonna Nighthawk will facilitate um, some optimization routines so that people can run a series of tests that where the load itself will be able to put in a controller that will do an adaptive load. It's an adaptive load controller. So it'll run a test. Depending upon what comes back from that test, change the config, run another one, and have this process automated such that we're engaging with a couple, well, at least one, hopefully 2 universities to study, um, to answer those questions, to find the points of inflection for optimization around um, what's the optimal, my given my sensitivity to latency at a certain number and to a certain number of requests per second, what's the optimal cluster size? What like there's a bunch of things to optimization routines to go evaluate.
I see. Yeah, that would be great. More like tool support and deeper, because it's, I think, moving in this direction, that will be nice.
At
So
some point,
this
we'll
can end up in product as well. Yeah.
yeah, we'll probably end up like to the extent that we end up going that deep with Nighthawk. What we may end up doing is um, at some point it's less important to people that they're literally understanding and choosing between these three, and it becomes more about the feature that they get. Like, did they want to do a long running adaptive load test? Okay, if they choose that, then underneath we'll use Nighthawk. If they just wanted to run, depending upon what they wanted to do. um, by the way, Sako, one thing that's curious to me, just for the whole UX here is in question,
Mm.
and I don't know if Austin is. Oh yeah, he is on the call. There's Austin and a few others that are beginning to evaluate the user experience, and
Yeah, everyone.
there's
Hello.
Austin. And by the way, you're all welcome to. So Austin, if you don't mind, if you are able to post a link to the Figma project for the Meshery UI, people might be able to take a glance at. As a matter of fact, Sako is a great person to take a glance at the proposed UX for the performance profile, not the performance test that he's looking at now, but the profile, the ability to save your config and recall it. Like one of the things that I don't know that it often strikes people as being an ability. Sako, if you go to the results page,
Mhm.
and there's 2 things that I think are often overlooked, and it's our fault, not the user's fault. So one of those is the ellipse under the details column. It's like the very rightmost column. details, and it has this horizontal 3 dots. The horizontal. I don't know
Here,
if it was. Yeah, I know that you've seen this in the past because I know actually some of
this
but it's
is,
been a long.
yeah, yeah. Since I installed, yeah, I see it's really nice. Yeah, I missed it, to be honest. Yeah, that's
Okay, yeah, and that's kind of that good. That answers my question. It's like, hey, look, it's not very obvious that that's a thing, and so there's 3 little dots. I didn't know that I was supposed to click that. Okay,
that's a
that's good.
valuable information which I missed, to be honest, at this point.
Yeah, no, it
Probably, yeah.
really is. Yeah, without this context, yeah, it totally is. It's very important because especially as you go to share, if you're sitting here and you're like, well, you want to go share these results with whomever, it becomes significantly important to the extent that you ran yours in a particular environment. And yeah.
That host name, so it's interesting. Uh, that's also another question. I am not okay. Probably it was done old test. Okay, okay, yeah. That's the one. Yeah, that's the ones. Uh,
From a
I
year
logged
ago.
my email, which is saved from all time testing with GK cluster. That's why I was
Yeah,
confused. So yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's almost a year old test.
yeah, that's amazing. That it's all saved here. So that's, if you remember, for conference we were doing without mesh and with mesh. So that's, and yeah, I don't want to take much time. I couple things also I would like. So the fun thing would be more also interesting for, again, for will be CI/CD part. For example, with Git action, if it supports today already, or it's planning to support once Git action is doing, it can go and run that.
Yeah, there's a I so there's a couple of projects that we want to base around interactions with GitHub. Um, they haven't come forth. They've been described. I've asked a couple of times for volunteers in the community, and it hasn't really struck a chord with anyone just yet. One of the things that you can immediately do today with GitHub Actions is to either use the REST API to like programmatically invoke a performance test, or to programmatically provision a service mesh. You can either use the REST API, or you can just script Meshery CTL, because Meshery CTL has the ability to invoke a performance test, and it will soon have the ability to. As a matter of fact, it was last Thursday that one of the contributors was demonstrating the fact that it has the ability to provision a mesh, run a test. As a matter of fact, it has the ability to provision a mesh and do a canary rollout at the same time. That isn't released just yet, but
I see. Yeah, that would be as much so, because it's already installed in cluster. Would be nice to somehow integrate from Git action. It can go and run the one in cluster, not bring every time the measure. Yeah, that's
right. Yeah, not have to bring up the UI. Yeah, and a lot of the use cases aren't about the UI. Like, yeah, you don't. To your point, right? Like you just want to interface with it programmatically.
yeah. And yeah, other thing I liked about the validation regarding the best practices of, but I think I was sure if I was doing right. I think where,
Yeah.
for example, yeah, validation part, it was giving, for example,
Yeah, there was two. There's kind of two. On for almost all the adapters, you can verify whether or not they are compliant with service mesh interface, and that's good. That's that conformance thing. For Istio specifically, if you go to that adapter, that's weird that you only if you oh yeah, I think there's a little bit of a problem with that adapter. It looks like it's not running at the moment. It's not connected.
so yeah, there is measure OSM NSM. It will be a bit more also adding the description in that sense that if the first
Yeah.
coming, then which one you should select, and yeah, and then I am just curious for well this mesh configuration. It would be interesting like to see again. That's a I see the value here regarding that to do conformance test. So yeah, that's one of the things would be interested to see the result and if there is any changes required. And I will assume you can apply automatically that changes, or how's that?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, to date, this is a little bit. Well, this is a little bit harder to describe because the Istio adapter in this environment doesn't seems to be having problems. But there's kind of two validations. There's the one that you're looking at for service mesh interface, and it's yeah, you're right. Like you'd want to just if you want to ongoing confirm that Istio continues to adhere to SMI's specs. So that's good. There's a second set of validations, and it's really about best practices. Like, hey, you've got your Istio environment misconfigured. It today, Meshery doesn't have an auto remediation. Like it'll just point out that you're kind of doing some things correctly or incorrectly. The ability to auto remediate, makes a ton of sense. Like some of those can be auto remediated.
Can be okay. Yeah,
But
yeah, I would be interested, yeah, just to follow up a bit, also check more on that, which will be yeah, something valuable moving forward as well.
totally agree. Totally agree.
And just last few comments regarding the Helm, because I did it through the Helm, so I think as a just in simple way, I needed to download the Meshery itself so I think there is a way like to be able to use it as a Git Helm package. So that would be nice to add some index and not instead of downloading just pull from the Helm chart that and in the once it was coming and port forwarding, I think we can just get rid of the doing it port level because you can kill pod and so on. It will be nice. I mean, just add it simply with mesh as a service. That's another thing that in case the pod get killed and so on, then it will be easier to do for because that was coming when once you do install the Helm, that was coming. So it could be it's more the documentation side. Yeah.
Yeah, no, these are great notes. It's we need to immediately go remove the suggestion to clone the repo is not necessary. There is a Helm chart. It is published in Helm Hub or Artifact. What is it? Artifact Hub or whatever the
Oh, it's already published. Okay, I see.
yeah
It's actually the documentation.
yeah it's a pattern. Also yeah the like get the application. Oh right. Those instructions are coming the the Helm chart itself, right?
Yeah.
Which that's that's just a your choice. That's up to it's up to you, right? Or like it depends on what say the I guess say the part again about what you were saying about these instructions is that you don't necessarily need to do the port forward.
Oh, here. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just you install the Helm. It's coming as instruction. In this case, you have to get the pod name, usually, and then it was adding port forward here to the pod. But because also in port forward case, it support service name, which is doesn't change, which is Meshery by default, and it can just do yeah this service Meshery directly to the service level port forwarding. So
Yeah.
we can get basically rid of this command. We don't need to connect to the pod. I just changed this one here, port forward. It was for the pod level, pod name, which
Hmm.
was it was let's say like that, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, but we don't need that to get so. it could be one thing, just
Totally.
choose directly to go, something like that. Yeah.
The shorter the better. And yeah, yeah, Sako, actually, if you don't mind to post that into the meeting minutes when you're done.
Yeah, sure. I will go and post.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, yeah. This is all great. This is all great feedback. It becomes very painfully obvious that the majority of the people who are using and developing on Meshery are either A, just compiling and running locally, or B, deploying to Docker. And much less of the time are those users deploying to Kubernetes, because yeah, that flow should be well curated, and it's not. The thing is most of the work has been done. It's mostly about documentation, just cleaning it up, making sure it's smooth.
Yeah,
That definitely.
I just can see like going to webs, and every time I see it's really well documented. It's really UI and everything. Keep me impressing, and I follow also in the Slack the documentation and design thought going for there. That's all amazing. It's just the feedback. It's purely from let's say if in enterprise level requirement. If you are coming without non-engineering background, let's say if you put somebody in QA team without who doesn't understand QA and so what we need couple thing manual testing to do, that's the requirements coming for there. So, but definitely, otherwise, all the stuff from engineering perspective totally makes sense and really amazing job. And I definitely see the value, and it's easy to sell also in especially with startups coming fast. We're moving fast. The releases.
It's getting faster. Yeah, there's a bunch of people on the call who are being quiet, but it's getting faster because of them. Yeah, it's been there's two other things to point out to you. One is, and I know it's funny. It's funny that I'm going to point this out, but it's actually because I know that you already know that this is a capability. Um, uh, it's the ability to compare one or more test results, where when you check the box in
Yes.
the performance test results table.
Yeah. I think I use that one. Yeah.
Okay. And so I guess my question to you is like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
my gut feeling is that it's not obvious enough that this
I
isn't.
did that one. That one I did, and from UI perspective, I was looking so, and it is impressive that because I think you can select all of them. Yeah, that's and
Yeah.
compare it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's
It's just
just
hard.
a bit more for UI perspective, just to understand which one is going to what. But
Yeah.
because I think there is a different colors, so yeah, that's all. Because there are, for example, 3 test cases I selected. I would assume it's how are we gonna be for different? Okay, that's the one. Yeah, that
Hell,
would be understand.
hell, I don't know. I can't read this thing. I don't know what it's saying.
Yeah.
That's a joke, but yeah, no, it is a challenge to present so much info all in one thing, and it clearly needs some love and some help. It we shouldn't have to, like, we can go put up documentation that explains how to interpret it, but that's the wrong answer. The right answer is fix the user experience so that it's a more intuitive and self-explanatory. And to the extent that you can't get it super intuitive, then provide helpers, provide a small guide, like a small tour, maybe the first time that someone goes to use it. So you can say, look, you've got, just like Sako just said, you have 3 tests that you're comparing. So there's these tick marks on the X axis, on the horizontal axis. The first segment, that those 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 or 7 dots, those are all from your first test. In the middle column from your third test, and then the color coding is the percentile. now that we sit here and look at it and sort of stare at it for 2 minutes, it starts to soak in and it starts to be like, okay, okay. And then even after that, you're like, okay, I understand the presentation of the data. And then even for me right now, it's like, okay, and so what does that mean? Like I see that you're saying that if you go to that teal color, the QPS on the third, on the third test, like I got a higher queries per second on that, and the highest on that one. Okay, and but what does that mean? Like, is that good, or is that bad, or where's the context for the rest of like how to really interpret this? And then to your point about whether or not there was remediations for those best practices, like, hey, where's the suggestion here? Um,
More
where's the
action,
goal?
not
Yeah,
just presenting data. What I should go and do, kind of more
yeah.
actionable things.
More than that, Sako, it's been our fantasy, or at least my fantasy, and maybe the goals of some others, is that. So, by the way, for everyone on the call, I hope that this feedback from Sako is like water on parched soil. And I suspect many of us just don't get enough user feedback. So this is Sako. I really appreciate this. It, it, you're shining a light on some things that are long overdue. One of the not only the UX, the UI, the interpretation, the are those important, but there's been a longstanding goal. We have open to us use of the CNCF's cluster, their cluster of physical servers. And I know Sako knows this, but so for the rest of us, we can go now that Meshery is like in a much better place than it was a year ago. It's open to us to go over and run a series of tests and use that hardware to produce some additional insights, some insights that we can come back and expose to people here and help them, and to be able to say the fact that Sako's test results from a year ago are still present and available to him here is a testament to that, to a goal of being able to share those insights. Like part of the insight is Sako's system better, faster than mine, or more efficient, or slower, or whatever the measurement is. The ability to go back and review all those statistics based on those environments. This continues to be a goal of ours. So if that
Yeah,
strikes a fancy for anybody.
definitely. I think there is a need for that kind of collaboration around the performance, and having that even comparing with somebody else in some other company, let's say, and so on. If you want to open and share and discuss through the challenges and so on, that could be another thing. Like
So,
if you
so
can,
on
yeah.
that, so I can't help it, but the Sako, if you visit the website smp-spec.io, smp-spec.io, it is service mesh performance spec. It is built for a few purposes, but one of them is specifically for what you just said, which is how do I take how do I compare with others? And how do I do that in a uniform way? That's what this specification is about. We've yet
It's,
to accomplish the full mission,
I see.
but it's
Definitely, yeah. I'm gonna have a more deeper look, and I think uh, one more thing would be nice. I don't know, would be support with Slack integration once you have
yeah.
if there is any scheduled way of running that every, let's say, week, Friday it runs and pushes to Slack as a notification, or it could be also kind of alerting and so on. Again, it's more about moving forward stuff. I'm talking that would be interesting too, because one of the most of all the companies will use Slack, so would be if there is an integration.
To run it, to initiate a performance test from Slack too, like, yeah, or to just show you the graph of the results, like in Slack. Yeah, like that's one of those things under your user. Yeah, that, yeah, we should. Let me just stop and say yes.
Yeah, and one more thing, like I think it has potential to replace us, like something like status page, yeah, which is pinging if the ingress whatever is down. It could also be used because it's inside hosted in cluster. It can, I don't know, run test every 1 minute and 10, 15 minutes because it has a potential already all in place. And once if it's down and so on, it can also ping there. So it could be performance plus health check functionality. It can be.
Yeah,
It's everything is already in place. So instead, we can just use Meshery for that.
yeah, having led technology strategy at SolarWinds at a monitoring company, it doesn't that fact doesn't escape me that yeah, the observability and monitoring is like there our so some of the contributors have been asking around roadmap and just not even some of the particulars, just kind of vision and like what are some of those goals. When we just talked about some of them, it for my part, and I'm just one voice of others. There's a number of other maintainers on this call, and for my part, it scares me to step in. Like that is part of the goal. That's absolutely part of the goal. What you just said. Hey, we're not gonna displace a Datadog or a Dynatrace or an App Dynamics. We are going to go deeper on the niche focus of service mesh, which will only grow in interest over time, more and more and more and more. And there's a bunch of network specific and business logic specific things that you can do that a service mesh is capable of doing. That yeah. Anyway, it scares me a bit that actually there was a demo last Thursday from Utkarsh, one of the contributors, where he really opened up the ability to take a service mesh pattern and which is just a simple YAML file, very simple. It describes the mesh and its config that you want to provision, the performance test you want to run, the in this case it was a canary rollout that you want to do, and you just do Meshery pattern apply, and it does that whole thing. And it's what an awesome capability that is, and and it also scares the crap out of me because that puts Meshery in competition with a number of other projects and other companies. It isn't too far of a step away, and I won't name specific other projects, but very large projects that. So, but yeah, you're right. Like, hey, you're there and you're doing these things anyway. Yep, of course. Like you should. It should do the things that you had just said. The GitHub integration, the Slack integration, the SAML stuff, yes. The Helm stuff just needs to be cleared up. That's kind of silly that it hasn't been. There was one other that you said. The thing that we were just talking about.
Yeah, I think in general, just the scheduled one and alerting one that's once get integration. Yeah, that's. But as of today, just without any this comment, there is already enough value. It's installable, let's say, point. It's stable, robust, and it's work perfectly. And
thanks. Yeah, it's about time to. It's about ready to go into the CNCF. As a matter of fact, like in part because you'll see one other thing that Vineeth, who's on the call, and there's some others that are working on this as well. A project called Mesh Map. Actually, I think we talked about it. The visual topology is also behind the scenes, yet to be exposed. It'll be Kiali like in nature.
I see.
So which will be really helpful. One thing that you just touched on about scheduling is very much so a need. As a matter of fact, a workflow engine in general that has a scheduler is very much needed as a component of Meshery. There's a bit of an analysis that's begun about which workflow engine to use and to integrate with. So in part to answer Adina's question about Canary releases, the demo that was done last week was with Argo CD. Although to the user, they didn't even know that Argo CD was being used. It was just a simple pattern file. You apply it and By the way, there'll be a demo of that at the CNCF SIG network tomorrow, 1 p.m. Central. We'll do a demo of that whole flow. And this was an integration with OAM, with Open Application Model. So Meshery and OAM, Meshery is becoming OAM compatible. I know that some of this stuff is new on people, but we just don't have that much time to explain it all. So where there's an open analysis that's begun about what workflow engine to integrate with into Meshery, and ideally to embed and treat as a library. To me, this one looks pretty hot and fairly much like what we would want. Argo CD is sort of second most. As a sub capability of what Argo CD as a general workflow engine is capable of, Flagger is a specific Canary rollout thing. Flagger, great, will integrate or what have you, but it will dismiss that as like, that's not a full-blown workflow engine. And there's all kinds of workflow that we want to facilitate, like a Slack notification or like a schedule. Hey, I want to schedule this test. There's also a policy engine that we're in need of. So the founder, so I have a long history with OPA and the Styra folks and helping them go into the CNCF and things. The founder of Caverno just reached out to me a couple of days ago, wanting to catch up. He's a good friend. He used to deliver my product at Cisco. And so anyway, we need to evaluate, but we need both a workflow engine and a policy engine. That's actually one of the things I want to talk to everybody about today. Was we were just having a discussion with potential Adina, is this workflow engine not, are you talking about this presentation not being available? Or are you talking about Figma not being available? But any of them should be, all of them should be available to you. So this call didn't quite go as I was expecting. There's a couple of things to talk about. The feedback from Sako is very much so important. And I think it's very important for everyone here to hear that directly from, well, both from a contributor and a user like Sako. The last thing I wanted to, there's two things. So I made a call for volunteers on Get Nighthawk last night, and I've yet to be able to go through all the messages in Slack. So if I'll be finding if someone didn't already volunteer, I will find you. The last thing I want to talk about is a little bit about this. We spent some time yesterday talking to Outcast Systems. Outcast Systems is a low-code offering. So I think this probably tells you all that you would need to know is that they have a designer, a low-code designer. You have activities, you drag and drop them in. You build out a workflow of like doing, I don't know, Twitter sentiment analysis or whatever you're doing. I don't know. They're empowering IT with, I don't know, ticket create, whatever flows that they have. But we spent a long time with them talking about how they are thinking very well toward Meshery and some of the use cases that they have, and a lot of their use and what we had shown them on the call is something that a number of you have seen. But that we haven't spent a lot of time on, and we seem to perpetually lose time to talk about. And I wanted to make sure that this slide was shared. Michu and Anirudh are two people who come to mind that have asked about sort of vision and roadmap and forthcoming things and where can I optimize my time? How can I help? What do we like? What where are we sort of generally headed? Part of the answer is for those individuals to inform that and to affect that. But from a very high level, like, hey, here's a perspective of what that playing field looks like, or what a fully capable service mesh management plane might look like. I say fully capable. Maybe there's additional things. The core elements here are, and this slide doesn't quite build out very well. The core element here is like we said in the past, mesh sync is extraordinarily important to the project. It's the operator, Meshery operator that deploys, synchronizes information from Kubernetes, and is the lifeblood or pumps in a bunch of info about what's going on right now from a Kubernetes-centric perspective. Part of the reason that Meshery has 1 foot in Kubernetes and 1 foot out is because much of the world is outside of Kubernetes. For as much as we enjoy it and like it and spend time in it, Meshery needs to be able to bridge the divide and be part of both worlds. So for Meshery, part of this architectural view anyway, this marketectural view sort of starts with mesh sync, it pumping info into other components, like a workflow engine, to be able to execute like any number of use cases. Slack, GitHub, like integrations, sure. A schedule, sure. To basically be invoked, those workflows to be invoked and be called from policies that have been evaluated. So data from MeshSync or other that are being reasoned over and policies being evaluated, depending upon the evaluation of that policy, that a given workflow might kick off or not, like could or couldn't, depends on what's going on. Some of what we talked about with Nighthawk and a bit of machine learning that we're looking to do there can have an effect on policy, or some of those policies can be machine learned things. Meshery's ability to, this whole thing is Meshery, right? But so we shouldn't use the logo here, but just Meshery's ability to do multi-mesh lifecycle and config and management stuff is part of that flow, because it might be, part of the flow might be to go affect the config of a mesh. Part of the flow might be able to go insert a filter into a mesh, or into a site, update a proxy with a different Envoy filter to perform something different, dynamically load and unload those, to pump information into mesh map, into the visual topology, to have a designer. A mesh map right now is being created as an observability tool. Awesome, a lot of things, observability, and also the ability to take action, to like invoke a performance test or invoke a conformance test, or potentially to, at some point, there will also be a whole set of designer features that where you'll be able to design your topology and then just tell Meshery to realize that, or to go make it so. When it does, rather than encouraging ad hoc administration of your infrastructure, we'll integrate with GitHub for change management, to integrate with a GitOps-based deployment flow. So, comments from folks on the phone about these things?
I think it's pretty neat and looks good, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot that isn't spoken of about, once those architectural components are in place, about what you can go achieve. But Saka, you gave me a good excuse to talk about some of that.
Yeah, that's really amazing. The direction is swimming. I think as a joke, I did visually, it's with that pace, it's gonna be bigger than SNCF. It's really becoming that so many. It's
that scares the crap out of me as well.
No, stay strongly. You're back. It's amazing.
Nice. Well, we're just about out of time. I know that there were a couple of things to call out. So Navendu is here and has been iterating over designs to enhance Meshery CTL to support deployments, whether you wanted to use Helm to deploy Meshery, or just Meshery CTL to deploy Meshery into Kubernetes. There's a set of designs and a number of open issues for anyone who's interested in working on Meshery CTL. Please see Navendu. Anirudh has been focused there heavily as well. See Nivendu Anirudh. There's a little bit of a call for potential new participants in MeshMap. The window is closing. So if it's of interest, signal.
Yeah, I actually wanted to work on MeshMap. I looked at Cytoscape.js yesterday. Dhruv asked me to create some animations for edges or something. So I tried to look into that.
That makes me chuckle from a couple of perspectives.
Is it a good perspective or is it a bad?
Yeah, good. One is that good. There's more to do on MeshMap, and so having you and or others engaged, beautiful. That makes me chuckle. Makes me happy. The second reason why I chuckle, Vineeth, do you want to talk about why I'm chuckling about that?
Yeah, we have been pondering about that since a few months right now. So
yeah, I actually looked at that. The main like Cytoscape has functionality for adding animations on edges, and the density can also be decreased or increased based on the code. But the JavaScript library does not have something like that. Like, I couldn't find anything which was in Cytoscape.js. But maybe we can still do it if we get the nodes and the edges. I
yeah,
mean, the
the JS library doesn't have these features what Cytoscape has. So that's what we are thinking about, how to include how to add traffic capabilities into the animation capabilities into the Cytoscape JS library. You go on.
Anybody have anything else? Sako, you look fresh, man. You look like it was like 7 a.m. or something. I don't know what.
Yeah, it's 8 a.m. and it has been a while. Thanks so much for having me, and I will continue because more invest, and from user perspective, just move forward. I will come and be happy to share the results, and we'll also follow up on a couple of stuff. And that's definitely nice to see Meshery CTL, the documentation, and posting a nice where it's at and how it's moving. It's really impressive.
Those are the kindest compliments, because Sako knows what it was like when it was, barely anything. So,
yeah, exactly. That's and the new website. I love the new website and all the people contributed, and the one you shared me. So, is it gonna be still in Netlify? It's open source as
it
websites.
is. The site's open source. It'll continue to be open source.
It won't be. It won't any database, nothing. Yeah, like it's purely static.
All static.
That's amazing. Looks so.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it. Yeah. I hope
It was
there's a number.
It was in React, yeah, because I saw that it's using the React and it's impressive.
I'm trying. There's a number of people on the call who I hope are just soaking it in, just soaking in those compliments, because there's a number of people who've been pretty hard at it. Yeah, I won't be bashful and say like it blows some of the competition sites out of the water. Like it's just.
I mean, just looking at the Istio website and so on, and it will just compare. It's definitely stunning, good in among that.
It needs to. I mean, the thing is like it's not. It's the reason. This is the last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up. And it's it really needs to, because so many people have given so much work to Meshery, to SMP, to get Nighthawk, to all the projects, and for anyone who comes over to evaluate, yeah, it's possible that they wouldn't hit the layer 5 IO site. It's possible they would just land on Meshery.io and just analyze there, but it's highly likely that they will end up on layer 5 IO, that they will. And if it's representing all the projects and all the people who've like, it's very important that it down to the last pixel sort of, Yeah. So
Yeah, but it was for me because I need to go through the documentation that for that what's the latest change, and so it was straightforward, easy to follow, and from user perspective, that was fully clear. Yeah, for me. I don't have any comments on that regard, that there wasn't any confusion, because sometimes presenting too much information, it's also not good from user. It's becoming hard to follow, but I haven't felt going to website. And plus in general, that's also good comment for the product. I think just from value perspective, because there is parameters and so on, just showing a lot of stuff, that's also from some sense it's not good. Sometimes you just have to find the right balance to make it more actionable for the user, the ones value generates. So let's say having hundreds of statistics won't help, but having like only few but more actionable would help. So
I promised to shut up. So anything else for today? Nice. Thank you all. Thank you, Sako.
thank you all.
Thanks, Nina. Yeah.
Thank you for the
Bye all.
presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Very
Bye, guys.
nice. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye bye.